Hi everyone, Pierrick from P2 Design here. In this video we will start animating our character. We will create a walk cycle in a proper way. And by this I mean that we will create a real cycle with a clean graph editor, not something where we just put keyframe here and there and hope for the best. Let's get started. The first thing we will do is to create a keying set. I will open the dope sheet and switch to action editor and create a new action. I will call it keying. I will click the little shield icon near the name to make sure that this animation or action will be saved whether it's used or not. In this keying action, we will just add all the keyframe needed to animate our character. Selecting each bone, we will insert a keyframe pressing I, selecting the available channel that we can see in the transform panel. In the case of the root bone that is selected, I can see that all the transform channels are unlocked, so I will choose Lock Rot Scale. Now I can see that the different channels turn to yellow, meaning that there is a keyframe and I can see a keyframe in my dope sheet timeline. So now I will repeat the process for all the other bones. So whenever a bone has all its channels available, I will use the lock rot scale as an insert keyframe. But in the case of the pull target of the knees, for example, I will only insert the location. For all the arm bone, we only allow rotation. So I will press I rotation. To see all the keyframe I've inserted, I can uncheck the selected only filter or activate the show all filter. If I want, I can reorder the position of the different bones into the dope sheet UI by selecting them and pressing the page up and page down key. You can see that the different bone channels are also displayed using the color we have given them in the different bone groups. One thing I forgotten to do previously was to rename those bones with the prefix control instead of target. This will just make those clearer. And the thing is that in the action editor, their different keyframes will be automatically renamed. What I will do now is to open a new window and set it to timeline, and I will enable the auto recording. This means that whenever you will move a bone, Blender will automatically keyframe it. The downside here is that Blender is also writing a keyframe for the locked channel. And I really don't like that because this is inputting more information that are useless and will make our graph editor less easy to read. But we can easily avoid this by going into keying and set it to available and then enable the keying filter. From there, Blender will automatically write keyframe, but only if there is an existing keyframe, and this is why we have keyframed all of our bone by hand previously. If I now check my graph editor, you can see that it's nice and clean and I don't have any unwanted curve like the location and scale for this bone, for example. Only the rotation curve are available and displayed. This is something that is too oftenly overlooked or ignored, and this is a very good point to start animating properly. The easiest way to animate a walk cycle is to use the layered technique. It's a bit less intuitive than using a blocking where you will block the different position of the walk cycle, but it doesn't require any experience. What we will do instead is animate first the legs, then the body, and finally the arms. To make sure our viewport is responsive, in the rendering option I will click the simplify option to reduce the number of subdivisions of our model. Since I want to animate on 24 frames, this is kind of the go-to whenever you are animating a walk cycle, I set the timeline range from 0 to frame 23. Probably forgotten to parent the foot controllers and the torso controller to the root bone previously. This is why I've just done it. And now we are ready to start the animation. I will open the dope sheet editor set to action. I will duplicate the keying set and call this 01 walk. And I will click the lichen shield icon to make sure I won't be losing this animation whenever I will reload the file. In the document option, I will set the frame rate to 30 frames per second. This is a matter of personal preferences, but I prefer to animate in 30 frames per second, and this is more and more common nowadays. So now we will start blocking our foot animation. I will slide the foot on the y-axis forward, and I will rotate it such as some kind of imaginary heel is landing on the ground. We call this the contact pose. Note that I recorded this keyframe on frame 0, now I will move the timeline cursor to frame 4 or 5, and I will cancel or reset the rotation and position of my foot by pressing Alt R and Alt G, and I will slightly move it forward. Note that you can move your keyframe as you will do for any object. Select it and press G. You can also constrain it on the X-axis if you want. Now if I move the timeline cursor, I will see the animation occurring or the interpolation between the two keyframes. You can also press spacebar to play the animation. But I don't want to see this interpolation between the two keyframes while I'm blocking, so I will select every keyframe and press T and set it to constant. Now there won't be any variation in space until I reach a new keyframe. I've moved the cursor to frame 8, and now to make my life easier, I will go in front view, press Alt B and frame half of the character, so that I won't be seeing anything else. Then I will select my left foot controller and I will move it backward and slightly rotate it to set it in the position just before it leaves the ground. Then I will move to frame 12 and I will record a new position for the foot. We will set it in the air, right in the middle. This will be our passing pose. Note that I'm slightly leaning the foot forward. From there I will create another keyframe, but don't do it because I will get rid of it. This is a useless keyframe in the blocking. We will do this new keyframe or this new position once we will be polishing the animation. The idea is to have only 4 keyframes, the initial one and 3 other positions. The idea is also to duplicate all the first keyframe onto the frame number 24 because we are creating a cycle, so the very last frame will be the same as the very first. And then we just have to distribute our 3 frames, not 4, because I've created one useless here, every 6 frames. So it does make more sense whenever you haven't created this additional keyframe for nothing. Now that our blocking is done, we will go right into polishing. So I will switch the interpolation of our foot from constant here to Bezier. I will activate the only selected filter, select my foot, and then select every keyframe, press T and set it to Bezier. Now playing the animation, we can see smooth transition from one keyframe to the other, even if those transitions are really not looking very good. To get those to look better, we will have to work on the graph editor, modifying the curves. This is something that can be a bit scary for a new animator, but once you master it, this is a must use. I've unfolded the control foot.L and I will hide the curve for the scale and the rotation, and we will be only working on the position of the foot in space. The green curve shows the position of our foot on the y-axis, and since the controller is aligned with world space, it's like its position in world space. When you're walking at a constant speed, your body is not accelerating or decelerating, so its movement is linear. Since we are not moving our character in space, the foot should have a linear speed whenever it's in contact with the ground. So we should have a straight line between the frame 12 and 0 instead of this curve. To do so, we'll select both handles and we'll press V and set them to vector, and we can get rid of the intermediate frame here. Now the foot is moving at a constant speed on the ground. What will be nice now is to have our foot nice and flat whenever it's in contact with the ground. So what we will do is work on the X rotation curve. So I will hide every channel and unhide the X rotation curve. Then in the graph editor, I will press A to select everything and press the dot to frame all those keyframes. Since I want the foot to be flat on frame 1, instead of moving this keyframe to a value of 0, I will duplicate a frame that is already at 0 and move it by constraining it on the X-axis. I will then set its handle type to vector by selecting it, pressing V and set it to vector, so that we don't have a deceleration before the foot gets flat on the ground. Also, I feel like the foot is rotating too early before leaving the ground, so I will duplicate the flat foot frame and move it to frame 10 and also switch it to vector so that whenever the foot will rotate to leave the ground, it will do it with the energy he has previously gathered. This is a decent start working on the rotation. We will reactivate our location curves and we will now work onto the Z location, so the 8th of our foot. When you are walking, your foot is falling on the ground, so it's accelerating before it touches the ground. So I will switch the contact keyframe to vector. Then animation is also a matter of feeling. Here I feel like it should be better than if I was offsetting the contact on frame 1, so I do offset this keyframe. Now when the foot will leave the ground, I'd like it to raise a little faster, so I will also switch this one to vector, the Z curve, and I also would like the foot to extend a bit backward whenever it's leaving the ground. So what I will do is that I will slightly rework the Y curve, duplicating the next keyframe and moving it just after the last contact keyframe with a higher value, meaning that the foot will go even more backward. This will input momentum to the foot movement, which is very important. Now, one of the most important things about creating a cycle is that the first and the last frame must be the same and they must be aligned. So I will select both those keyframes. I will set my pivot point to individual origin and I will rotate both at the same time so that they are aligned. Then I will select the first keyframe and I will duplicate it and overwrite the latest one. Now I will just slightly tweak my different curve to get a better feeling regarding the movement of the foot. So in this case I don't really have advices, just play a lot the animation until you feel like the foot movement is right. But if you have followed the previous step properly, you should already have a very decent foot movement. The key thing to remember are to use linear interpolation whenever the foot is in contact with the ground, and to use vector curve whenever a foot is contacting the ground, because it's accelerating before it hits the ground. Now, since we are lazy people but very clever ones, we will unhide every keyframe, select them all and press Ctrl C. Hearing that, you should have understood that we will pass those keyframes onto the other foot, but we will pass them mirroring the animation. To do so, I will press Alt B to cancel the frame display and I will select the right foot. Then in the graph editor, I will select all the keyframes by pressing A and I will press Ctrl Shift V. Now all the keyframes have been passed, but they have been passed in mirror mode. So now we just need to offset both foot so that when one goes forward, the other goes backward. To do so with all my curves still selected, I will press Shift D and I will move them on the X-axis by 24 frames. Meaning that our first frame will be on the very last frame. Then I will select all the keyframes by pressing A and I will move them back by 12 frames pressing G x minus 12. Now when I play the animation, I have an alternate walk. So now I would like to get rid of the useless frames that are out of range, before the frame 0 and after the frame 24. With my cursor set to frame 0, I will press I all channels. This will create a new keyframe for all channels. Now I need to address another problem, is that if I modify the previous keyframe, it also modifies the curve afterward, and I don't want this. To fix this issue, I will select the keyframe and set their handle type to free by pressing V and selecting free. Now if I move any keyframe prior to this one, you can see that my curve on the right is not getting modified anymore. So in the end, we just need to add a keyframe on frame 0 and frame 24 and convert them to free. Or you can do this on frame 0, then duplicate them and overwrite frame 24, and then you can get rid of all the other keyframes. And this way you get a proper and seamless walk cycle for your feet. It might be a little more complex than the usual walk cycle tutorial you will find on YouTube, but here you are learning a proper way to do it, and even if you're not planning to be a professional animator, that's not that complicated to do clean animations. On the next video, we will be animating the body of our character. In the meantime, if you are enjoying this content, please leave a thumbs up, share and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.